Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 26th of May 2022, and we'll be discussing the following during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the indictment, with the verdict that was announced as far as Yasin Malik's case is concerned. Yasin Malik, who is the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front's head, he has been given life imprisonment and a fine of 10,000 rupees. Extreme cases were put on him. Fake cases were put on him. We've been discussing that over the last couple of days as well. But the reaction as far as his verdict is concerned has also been unanimous from Pakistan and from elsewhere as well. These are fabricated cases, and this is a deliberate attempt not only to thwart the attempts of Kashmiri leaders to fight for the right of self-determination for the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but also it is a step in the wrong direction as far as India and its policies towards Muslims and held Kashmir is concerned. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns environmental pollution, climate change, and how that is affecting all the different countries across the world, especially in this region, India and Pakistan. Now, when on the one hand we see some countries doing good for their children, for the environment, for the societies as far as climate change is concerned. On the other hand, we also see a lot of carbon emissions, especially from the West, and that is impacting countries like Pakistan that does not emit as much of carbon as other countries do, but it is being directly affected. We are seeing the effects, we are seeing the extreme heat wave, we are seeing the environmental pollution, we are seeing the water scarcity, and this is going to become a huge crisis in the days and the months and the years to come. Especially the target date is 2025, when water is going to be a scarcity as far as Pakistan is concerned if the right measures are not taken. This is going to be our second segment of the day. Let's come to our first story, and that concerns Yasin Malik, his verdict, all the fake cases that have been put on him, and what the Indian court decided yesterday. More in the following report.
India is hurtling towards worse modern-day autocracy as it's employing malicious tactics to intimidate indigenous Kashmiri leaders. In the latest act of state-sponsored repression, Indian regime has sentenced Kashmiri pro-freedom leader Yasin Malik to life imprisonment in a sham case. The iconic freedom fighter Yasin Malik has been under detention at Delhi's Tihar jail since 2019, along with several other top pro-freedom leaders and activists. Yasin Malik has been the leading peaceful non-violent freedom movement under banner of Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front. Pakistan has strongly condemned Yasin Malik's malified conviction and sentencing on a grossly suspicious and contrived case. Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari stated that India can never silence Kashmiri's voice for freedom and self-determination. Foreign Office termed this bleak development as highly reprehensible and emphasized that the fictitious charges against Yasin Malik are not only in defiance of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, but also attempted to make a conjectural insinuation about Pakistan. The abhorrent Indian attempts seeking to defile the legitimate struggle of the Kashmiris for their right to self-determination as terrorism only substantiate India's deeply etched credentials as a serial violator of human rights.
Now, to discuss this very important issue, we've been joined in the studios by Kaswar Klasra. He's a renowned journalist. Kaswar, thank you very much for having joined us. On Skype, we've been joined by Safi Ghauri, who is a renowned lawyer and also a political analyst. Thank you very much, Safi, to have joined us online as well. Let's begin with you, Kaswar. Kaswar, when you look at the verdict that was given yesterday as far as Yasin Malik's case is concerned, and cases that are extremely, extremely important, if had those cases really been true, if we talk about sedition, we talk about criminal conspiracy, member of a terrorist gang of organization, conspiracy to commit terrorist acts, raising fund for terrorist acts, and terrorist acts, 6 different sections that have been put on him. Why is India so afraid? I mean, this is what we were just discussing before the show. Why is a country of more than 1 billion people so afraid of one man?
Well, you have talked about the cases against the most brave man in our Mr. Yasin Malik. Fake cases and a fake verdict has been given on these fake cases as well. And as you have rightly pointed out, we were just discussing a country of over 1 billion, and that is being ruled by a fascist Mr. Modi. They are afraid of a single man. What a shame. And the blessing in disguise is soon after the verdict, even the voices have been, raised there in Europe, Americans and Pakistan obviously as well. I think it's a win-win position not only for the Hurriyat leaders and also for the Pakistan as well, that a single man has challenged Modi's led regime. And I believe even if you take Pakistan's statement into consideration, and also this verses that has been raised from the Europe and Americans as well, that all shows it's a victory for the Hurriyat leader, and also of course for Mr. Yasin Malik, and the determination he has showed that have pushed a country like India into a corner. That's a win-win position for Pakistan and the Hurriyat leader as well.
All right, you say it's a win-win situation. Safi, when you look at the cases that have been under which he had been indicted, that is Yasin Malik, I'd like to raise those cases. Section 16 Terrorist Act, Section 17 raising funds for the Terrorist Act, Section 18 conspiracy to commit Terrorist Act, Section 20 being a member of a terrorist act or organization, Section 120B that was of course put on him when the life sentence was given to him, and Section 124A sedition. How do you see these sections that have been put on Yasin Malik, and how do you also look at the verdict that was given to him, that is of life imprisonment and 10,000 rupees fine? As a lawyer, how do you see this case?
Things that you have just mentioned are the ones that are being mentioned by the Indian media. However, the Indian media says that this was a fair verdict because Yasin Malik pleaded guilty to all of these charges. There was no trial. He just went, he said that he is guilty, therefore conviction was carried out immediately. Now, before getting straight into why he pleaded guilty, we need to look at the entire background as to what motivated him to say that he is guilty, in fact, of these things. And this starts back in 2019. In 2019, April, Yasin Malik was arrested from the streets of Srinagar, in which he was arrested for the violation of the Public Safety Act simply because he was protesting. A simple protester caught, pleaded not guilty, still given a 1-year jail sentence. Whilst his 1-year jail sentence was going on, there was a 30-year-old case initiated against him for the murder of 4 Indian Air Force officers. He had to suffer that trial in Indian kangaroo courts, which is still ongoing. Then whilst that case was going on, another fictitious case was filed against him of the kidnapping of the daughter of Mufti Said. So the Indian government has been building up one case after another case. Now, as far as these cases are concerned, this exact verdict, these pertain to his membership and his making of the JKLF, the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front. It's a proscribed organization to which he very simply stated that yes, he is in fact the founder and a member of JKLF, and if fighting for one's freedom is a crime, then he is guilty of said crime, which the Indian court interpreted as being a plea of pleading guilty, and therefore he handed out this charge. And it's interesting that you ask me what I think about it. I think more than me, one should ask Indians what they think about it, especially Indian Muslims who are living in Srinagar. I happened to have a discussion with a very educated lady in Srinagar today in the morning, and to my surprise, they were actually very happy because they were expecting that he would be given a death sentence. That is the level of confidence they have in the Indian courts. They did not think that the Indian courts would spare his life, and they're just happy that it's a life imprisonment. At least he survives. That's all. This is the level of confidence an ordinary Indian has in the Indian kangaroo courts that exist right now. And it's tragic because this was an expected verdict. These are the kind of verdicts that the Indian courts have been giving for a very long time. As a lawyer, of course, because he has already pleaded guilty to said charges, there is no appeal. There is no forum for him to go. The only thing that Yasin Malik can do now is to file a revision against the term of life imprisonment. In fact, it's 2 life imprisonments that have been awarded to him. So he can appeal. He can say that the sentence itself was too harsh. That may be reduced by the Indian High Court, but the conviction itself now cannot be set aside.
So he cannot appeal this sentencing.
There is no appeal to this sentence.
All right, because that's a very interesting aspect of it that we did not, a lot of people did not know beforehand. When you look at, also you were talking about the verdict, and I'll then go back to Kaswar. You said that you talked to this lady and she said that she was very relieved that he was not being given the death sentence. This was what the Indian authorities were really hampering for, that he be given the death sentence. Why, in your point of view, I'm not saying, I'm not talking of the veracity of the case, but why did the Indian court finally settle for giving him a life sentence?
Sorry, are you asking me or are you asking Mr.
I'm
Kaswar?
asking you, then I'll go to Kaswar with the same question.
I feel the reason why they have done so is because they do not want to make a martyr out of him. If he were to be given a death sentence and if he were to be hung, then people, Kashmiris, would have yet another martyr figure. They don't want to grant that to him. In fact, in many ways, a death sentence is worse. Life imprisonment is worse than a death sentence because it entails endless suffering. Yasin Malik, since 2019, he has been in jail. He is a patient. He has been suffering from many diseases. His wife has come publicly on television, stated many times that he has coronary heart disease that needs immediate attention, that he needs replacement of valves. Not obviously something that has been catered to by the Indian government, and I don't feel like they would. They would rather that he just dies in jail rather than by their hands, so that they can blame somebody else, nature perhaps, rather than taking the blame. This clearly shows how malified the courts are, because they're planning his death in jail. That's the way I look at it.
All right, so they want to kill him softly, if I were to put that term very bluntly. All right, Kaswar, coming to you, I mean, we've seen that the sentence, and a lot of people in India were talking about the sentence would be the death sentence is what we were expecting more or less as well. When the verdict was announced and he was given a life sentence, a lot of people were relieved. But is this really a relief for Yasin Malik? Is it a relief for his family?
He has been given a double sentence. I don't think that they have given relief to Mr. Yasin Malik by giving this sentence. And you must, when we talk about Indians, we must consider that under Modi's regime, every institution, including the democracy, their courts, and each and everything, they are under the influence of extremist BJP organizations. RSS, which rightly, and I must have praised Mr. Imran Khan, he has been rightly pointed out that they are under the influence of RSS. No, yesterday's verdict by the Apex Court of India itself shows that they were under the influence of Modi's and the extremist organization as well. And the verdict itself has been politicized. You know, double sentence given by the Apex Court of a country which has over 1 billion population. So it was itself a shame for the court as well, and a lawful sentence that has been given to a Hurriyat leader. And I believe it was the decision was politicized, and they just wanted to make it an example for the other Hurriyat leaders as well. But I must tell you, the Hurriyat leaders, they have never been afraid of Hindu fascist regime since 1947, and even this sentence will not shatter their determination as well.
We've seen that the determination is not shattered at all. But Safi, coming to the verdict itself and the victimization of Kashmiri leaders such as Yasin Malik Saab, such as in the past we've seen the hangings of Maqbool Bhat Afzal Guru and so many others. There are even as we speak many Kashmiri leaders who are incarcerated in the Tihar jail. A lot of editorials have talked about this as being a judicial murder, the case of Yasin Malik. Al Jazeera says the filing of all these cases against the leading pro-freedom leader has forced many in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to fear that the Indian state has already decided to sign his death warrant. Although it's not really a death warrant, but indirectly it more or less is. What's your take on that? Is this a form of judicial murder from the Indian state to the Kashmiri leaders?
Of course, there's no denying that. I think Yasin Malik himself also alluded to that when he stated that he was not being given a chance to appear before the court. This trial took place mostly in his absence. He kept asking for the opportunity to be heard. He wasn't given that opportunity. He was only given the opportunity to ask if he wanted to be charged guilty or not. He pleaded guilty. There is, of course, one can plead guilty, and after pleading guilty, one does not go through a full-fledged trial. That is an understood part of law. But regardless, he wanted to perhaps use the forum of the courts, much like Bhagwat Singh did, to try and propagate what his ideology was. And that was never given to him by the Indian courts. They were so afraid that if he were to come and if he were to speak his mind, that would further ignite protests across India and especially in Jammu and Kashmir. So they did not even let that happen. Very clearly malified trials through and through. And we have already discussed in previous shows how the present legal situation in India does not allow these things to happen anyways. These are very, very bad laws. It's not even about whether the courts were following the law or not. Of course they were following the law. It's just that the law is so terrifyingly bad that it gives no one any rights. We have spoken in the past about how there are laws like Prevention of Terrorism Act of India, where if you want to file a case against any Indian authority, you first have to go and seek permission from the federal government of India in New Delhi. Once they allow you to file a case, only then can you file a case. This is nonsensical. Why would they allow you to file a case against yourself? It's like, I want to file a case against you first. I want to seek your permission. I go and say, Omar, please, can you permit me to file a case? And if you don't permit me, I can't file a case. This is the kind of justice that is being meted out. And
so in fact, what they are doing is buffering any kind of judicial move towards a government employee, including any BJP member.
Any government employee who has not just any government employee, but especially in India's case, where the problem really lies is with the Indian military. And so in order to, so if we have heard of countless instances where Indian military has been involved in rapes of Kashmiri women. Now those women cannot take these Indian military men to court because they first need to seek permission from the federal government, which will allow them to file a case, and only then can they take them for such heinous crimes. These are violations of basic human rights. Basic fundamental rights cannot be taken directly to court by the ordinary Kashmiris. That's the situation.
And laws such as these will never be changed because it goes to the benefit of the current BJP regime or the Indian government. Kaswar, when it comes to the reaction that has come from the international arena, there have been strong reactions, but the strongest has come from Pakistan, whether it be our parliament, whether it be our Senate, whether it be our National Assembly, our Prime Minister, our Foreign Minister, our President. They all have condemned in the strongest of terms. At the United Nations, we have had a very strong reaction from Ambassador Munir, who has said that it was India's suppression of their legitimate fight that violated international law and constitutes war crimes. Is the world listening to what Pakistan has been saying as far as the Indian atrocities is concerned?
I think, yes, they are listening to Pakistan. They are listening to what India has yesterday, Indian court have, said. And I think it's the high time for Pakistan to raise Kashmir issue as well. And as they say, blessing in disguise, this verdict has once again pumped fresh blood into the fates of Kashmiris as well. And the Pakistan has played rightly very well. Pakistan's representative of United Nations, you must appreciate his the statement. He proudly, highlighted this issue, and after that, I think the Pakistani Prime Minister, the Pakistan's Parliament, and other politicians as well, Maryam Nawaz as well, she was the first one to address to the nation soon after the verdict. I think Pakistan's political elite, Pakistan's the representative,
they are all on one page when
they
it comes
have, yes, they were all found on the same page.
The DGISPR also came out with a very strong statement.
They played very well. I think the world cannot ignore Pakistan's stance on Kashmir right now. And this verdict, and thanks to the Indian court as well, soon after giving this verdict, they have actually helped Pakistan to raise this issue once again on foreign front as well. Pakistan has played very well.
Let's hope, Kaswar, and let's hope, Safi, that some kind of reaction comes from the world, strong reaction from those countries, from the organizations that matter as to this victimization of Yasin Malik and such Kashmiri leaders. This brings us to the end of the first segment. We'll return with our second segment after this short break. Stay tuned. welcome back. And our next segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns climate change, environmental pollution, heat waves, water crisis. These are affecting the world, but in this region, it's affecting Pakistan as well as India. Due to the effects of climate change, water scarcity is something that is going to slowly and steadily engulf Pakistan if the right measures are not taken. So is the heat wave as we are experiencing it all across Pakistan. So are other effects of climate change. We'll be back with our guest, but let's watch this report first.
The world has started to see the impact of dramatic climate change, such as the code red for the humanity issued in the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report should have been a wake-up call to humanity. World Weather Attribution Group analyzed historical weather data and suggested that the chances of heat wave has been increased by at least 30 times since 19th century before widespread emissions of planet-warming gases began. Four major signs of climate change that are concentration of greenhouse gases, sea temperatures, sea level rise and sea acidity have all set new records. A recent report by British Met Agency revealed that Pakistan and India face 100% increased chances of setting new heatwave records due to current trend of climate change. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has termed the report a disappointing story about the failure of the humanity to overcome climate change. Indicating that climate change is a real game changer, a report prepared by PMD, a severe heat wave in March and April devastated vegetation, water resources and livestock in Cholistan region and thus could presage the onset of drought in Cholistan. The perfect climate storm renders urgency of emergency measures to tackle the issue to curb or at least minimize the potentially devastating effects of the rising heat.
We've just watched the report on climate change. The effects of climate change are very rampant, are very evident in countries such as Pakistan. To talk about the effects of climate change, what needs to be done, what hasn't been done as far as that is concerned, we've been joined by Munir Ahmed Saab. Munir Ahmed Saab is an environmentalist and deals with these issues since quite some time. Munir Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Munir Saab, let's begin with the climate change and how the rich countries are dealing with it. Do you feel that they are doing enough? Don't you feel that the carbon emissions haven't reduced as far as the West is concerned, and that is also contributing to climate change in countries such as Pakistan?
Yes, you have asked like three questions in one go. First of all, what developed countries are doing, they are shouting a lot, but doing less. They could not, collect the funds required for climate green fund, and they were not able to help vulnerable countries like Pakistan and others as it was desired or required because of the climate change impact. And you see Pakistan is one of the first 5-7 countries hit hard by the climate impact. And as our Minister of Climate Change, Senator Shari Rahman has said, and that is very valid, that 2025, in 2025, in just 2-3 years, we will be the worst hit by water scarcity.
And we're already seeing the, the beginning of all of that.
Yeah, that is. And March and April were the hottest months since 1901 in 122 years.
Oh, all right. That I did not know.
Maybe. Like for how many years? Maybe like
more than a century. I mean, that is more than enough. Also, you talked about Senator Shari Rahman, but she also said that the world is at the verge of a climate disaster and that the international leaders are not fulfilling their commitments in this regard.
That is true. That is true. They are asking us to go for climate-friendly practices and reduce carbon emissions, but they are not doing so themselves. Last year, at COP26, we signed zero emissions, net zero emissions. Still, that is not on the agenda of the developed countries. They are not curtailing their emissions. They are asking us to do. And while our contribution is less than 1%, and we are doing a lot more measures just to combat, to mitigate the impact that we are facing. But the developing countries don't have much funds to do it. True. For example, like to combat the heat wave, India and Pakistan were the most vulnerable, and they suffered a lot last 2 months. But what is because we have no funds and economy are not doing very well. And at this time, the developed countries, they should contribute. US came back to climate agenda, but still they are not sparing money. And even Britain, they have like spared some money, but the other countries, they more than 50 countries are included in the developed world, but their contribution is not significant. The $100 billion target was not achieved and then revived last year again, but still we are, the Green Climate Fund is not having much funds for vulnerable countries. Least developed Africa has gone to ashes, and why we like go far away, just in Cholistan and Thar, and we have seen many documentaries and video clips that how animals are dying and how human beings are suffering from water scarcity and heat wave and no rains during the last 2 months. Like rather several months we are not having sufficient rains. On the other hand, the heat wave was, has increased glow phenomena in many folds, as I mentioned in while I have written on Shishpar and beyond Shishpar.
Of course, let's come to that article and let's come to the Shishpar glacial lake outburst, which is playing havoc as per what you've written in the article with infrastructure yet again. You talk about obvious reasons and contributing factors to it: fast increasing population, unchecked urbanization, unsustainable tourism, irrational deforestation and overconsumption of natural resources. Is the government not taking care of all of these factors that you've mentioned?
A government, it's not only up to the government. Government can give you a policy guideline. They can push their organizations to do much more, but mostly, like for example, if the international agencies has given you required funds to do whatever is required on ground, and you are not implementing that project, Pakistan government can bring the project and money, but its implementation. And they can see like ecotourism is much more important, and the locals, they should not sell their lands for other purposes than they are meant for. And if you change your agricultural land to a housing project, or you chop off all the trees around and build like resorts and other things, what does it mean? That you are not responsible citizen. You are not acting according to the national agenda. And then like if government takes some strict actions against them, they would then they started crying against the government and shouting slogans.
Let's also talk about international organizations, international the big wigs that are there, not only in Pakistan but also across the world. In Davos, Shari Rahman Sahaba also said that the big international companies causing more pollution need to show more responsibility to avoid environmental hazards.
That's true.
Can that happen? I mean, because as we see the world turning, we don't see the international organizations really, paying heed to what we call climate change.
Look, we have several multinationals. They are supposed to spend some of their funds on green industry, on green practices, and to mitigate such kind of impact that is caused by their industry, but they are not doing so. And we have several multinational banks as well. They are they're supposed to do 2% of their net profit, not the turnover. Even then, that is not being spent. And on the other hand, and whatever meager money is spent, that is, I don't know how that money is spent and where it goes, but we don't see any. In this context, I believe, and I have several times wrote about it, that we need to have national CSR regime, where all these, mostly there are 5 types of corporate sector groups that we can say. One is banking, the other one is consumer products, the third one is oil and gas sector. Oil and gas sector making billions, but they don't spend. And unfortunately, I have seen a couple of CSR policies of such oil and gas industry.
And they are not up to the mark.
And they only see a local community and health, and that's it. And they don't spend money on it.
These organizations need to look at climate change and the effects, and need to put money aside so that as necessary could be done in coordination with the government as well. Speaking of the government, United Nations, last question, United Nations Sustainable Goal number 13 that pertains to climate change. How do you see that? How is the government action towards that? Are you satisfied?
Last 3-4 years, yes, that was expedited. You might have a difference from some people or political differences, but we must say that climate action was taken in the right direction.
All right.
And we shall continue with it. There were several reservations on 10 billion tree tsunami campaign. We have to rectify it, and the experts have said many things about it. We need to correct it, and then we shall keep it on. And secondly, clean green movement, and we are not engaging communities. And believe me, if we engage community, for example, if you plant 2 trees in front of your house, or 3, if you have a larger house and lawn, and if you plant 10 trees and grow it up, what goes off you basically? You will be getting fresh air, and it will also contributing to the oxygen reservoir that is required, and it would help at least mitigate the local impact of the climate change, heat.
True.
And such kind of things we need to go about. And the most important thing is government shall now should have a strict policy. If you are not doing well, and if you are contributing or damaging to the local environment, or you are changing land to certain other purposes, as it is done in Multan areas, and the mango orchards were like totally chopped off.
I mean, as per reports, 50% of production has happened this year of mangoes,
and that will also be very not up to the standard that and to the demand. And on the other hand, we have also damaged our main crop, wheat. And the staple crops are very important for us,
especially under the current situation.
Under the current situation. And when we have been importing our wheat from Ukraine and other staple cereals and foods and such kind of things. But unfortunately, there is war conflict.
That is what is causing this issue. So Pakistan needs to be self-sufficient as
self-sufficient. Why cannot we are 70-80% agriculture country?
Exactly.
And
we need to take the measures.
We need to take measures, and the rapid urbanization shall be stopped. At least if we give even 30% of the necessities or civic amenities in the villages, the people will not migrate to urban.
That's a very important point, and I hope that the people are listening, because rapid urbanization is also one of the causes that is leading to the effects of climate change accelerating in countries such as Pakistan. Munir Saab, thank you so very much to have joined us and to have talked to us about the different aspects of climate change and how it is affecting countries like Pakistan, and how the West needs to be more attentive towards climate change so that it does not go beyond control in the years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of today's Newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories and segments that pertain to you, us and Pakistan. Stay safe, follow the SOPs, and whenever you go out, if there's too much of sun, do try to avoid the direct sunlight as much as possible. Allah Hafiz.